I rise today, Mr. President, to talk about one of our colleagues here in the Senate who has an inspiring story and is celebrating an important anniversary this week. I want to mention this week, doorkeeper Tim O'Neill, who works with us all here in the Senate, celebrates 27 years of government service. He's been a doorkeeper since 2010, during which time I've had the pleasure of getting to know Tim, as have many of my colleagues in the United States Senate. His career has been a remarkable journey. It started here in the Senate, where he was a legislative director, later went on to work in the White House, not just during one presidential administration, but during 4 presidential administrations. Tim worked for Presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton. He worked in the Department of the Treasury and then at the Federal Housing Finance Board, eventually becoming chairman of that agency. After that, he went to the House of Representatives, where he was senior legislative counsel for the Financial Services Committee. We're happy to have Tim back here on the Senate side, where he works today. Tim's had an impressive career, as I have outlined, but the most amazing thing about his career doesn't reside in what he's done, but what he has overcome. One weekend in January of 1989, when Tim was at the Treasury Department, his life was altered forever. It first changed on the Friday morning of that weekend when he found out that his wife Ginny was pregnant with their first child. But then later that weekend on a Sunday, he was putting on his shoes to go jogging, 34 years old, and he suffered a major stroke that affected 2/3 of his brain. The doctors didn't originally tell Ginny how serious it was. Later she would find out that they did not believe that he would live through the night. And if he did, they believed that his lasting brain damage would mean that he would never walk again and never talk again. Despite this very grim prognosis, Tim had a few things going for him. First is an incredibly positive attitude that we all see every day here in the Senate. Second, he was young and athletic, which improved his chances of recovery. He also talks about his Irish determination, which made him resilient. And he had the knowledge of knowing that Ginny was pregnant. And he was absolutely committed to being part of his daughter's life. In fact, one of the few things he said he remembered in his initial stages of recovery was that Ginny was pregnant and that he had a daughter coming. And when he began regaining his speech, the first thing he told Ginny was that he was going to recover. And the path was not easy. In those first few months, he worked 8 hours a day, trading his government job for a rehabilitation facility. He worked with speech and physical therapists. And with Ginny at his side, he put in overtime every day. The extensive road to recovery was daunting. Tim, a Harvard-educated lawyer in the middle of a successful career, had to totally relearn things. He had to relearn how to read. He had to relearn how to write. I know Tim will agree with me that his wife, Ginny, was the unsung hero of this story of recovery. And the O'Neills felt the support and generosity of those around them. As I mentioned, he worked at the Treasury Department. Those close to Tim, and some of those who hardly knew him at all, donated their personal leave time to allow him to keep receiving a paycheck during this recovery process. And the Treasury Department assured him that his job would be waiting when he was ready to return and able to return. Shortly after the stroke that he wasn't supposed to ever recover from, Tim was home, self-mobile in a wheelchair. Soon, he taught himself how to walk again. He never regained use of his right hand at all, one of his only lasting handicaps to this day. So you know what he did? He learned to write with his left hand. His resilience and determination is really amazing. And he went back to work. His stroke was in January of 1989. Again, that Sunday, doctors didn't think he'd live through the night. And if he did, they thought his life would be in a wheelchair. In 1995, only 6 years later, he was sworn in as a director of the Federal Housing Finance Board, a position he was nominated for by President Clinton. Later in 2001, President George W. Bush elevated Tim to chairman of that board. In 2005, he became a senior legislative counsel to the House Financial Services Committee until his first retirement from government in 2007. He had 20 years of service. He'd had a good career and a recovery story that was respected by everyone who knew about it. He could very well have sat back and enjoyed that retirement, those 20 years. But Tim's life is defined by purpose and service and people. So after trying retirement for a little while, Tim returned to the place he loved and the people he knew, coming back here to the United States Senate as a doorkeeper in 2010. Tim's extensive knowledge of Capitol Hill has benefited the U.S. Senate, and I tell you what, his good spirits have had an effect on countless senators, including me, countless members of our staff, and many visitors. His attitude is infectious. He exemplifies the power of positive thinking. He certainly brightens my days, and I know he has inspired many. By the way, I just heard today he's also a leader among doorkeepers, including organizing periodic team-building events at the Nats games with his fellow doorkeepers. This month, as we recognize Tim's 27 years of public service, we also recognize his incredible life journey and his resilience in the face of adversity. Strokes can affect people in a variety of ways. In Tim's case, I must say, I think it made him a stronger person. Guided by his love for his wife, Ginny, and their 3 children now, and his dedication to public service, Tim has had a career and a life worthy of celebration and recognition. So Tim, today, this week, we all congratulate you on 27 years of honorable service and wish you many more to come. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back my time.